Welcome to the Amazing Greats podcast, where we have a unique opportunity to talk with people you know from movies, music, sports, books, or politics. It's a real and raw conversation about their life, their career, and how faith has played a role in it. No preaching or teaching, and no church experience is required. Today, join your host, an accomplished video and audio producer, voice talent, voice coach, and former on-air personality. Here's Clem Daniels.
Thank you, Joe, for that nice introduction. Hey, welcome everybody to another episode, another podcast of Amazing Greats. Today, I'm your host, Clem Daniels, and my special guest is, well, not only amazing, but she's also great in so many ways, which you'll find out. Today, you'll meet Care Tuk from Wasilla, Alaska. She is a survivor. Oh, boy. For over 4 decades, she's fought many a battle with a variety of cancers. We're talking at least 14. She's survived more than 120 surgeries, and she's truly the bionic woman. She's made up of titanium, screws, and fishing line. Her first book is appropriately titled Loose Screws and Skin Knees. And if all this is not enough, she is a survivor of a drunk driver rear-ending her at 50 miles an hour, shattering her facial bones, which required even more surgeries. Care has been given CPR twice and brought back to life and survived. And she survived N1H1. And most recently, her and her husband, Bill, COVID-19. Man, we're very, very lucky to have with us today, and I do mean that literally, Care Tuk. Care, how are you?
Thanks, Clem. I think it's more of an honor and pleasure for me to be with you.
Personally, I've known you for a number of years, but my wife Terry has known you for even longer. You two went to high school together on Mercer Island here in Washington, which is right outside of Seattle. And you two went to college together at UPS, where she introduced you to your husband?
Yes. In fact, I was about ready to strangle her when she set me up on that blind date with this behemoth, ninth in the nation heavyweight wrestler.
So in the introduction today, I mentioned that you had several surgeries, 120 surgeries, and you've had cancer, 14 bouts of cancer, and you're suffering from four different types of cancers right now. Let's go back to the beginning and tell us how and why all of this has happened to you in your life.
Sure. It started prior to my knowledge of knowing I was even exposed to the drug DES, or diethylstilbestrol. My mom had colon cancer. She was a teacher at the high school that I went to, that Terry and I went to on Mercer Island. And she died of colon cancer when I was 16. Mm-hmm. And, 16 is kind of that funny age where you're just getting to know your parents, and mothers and daughters are sometimes talking nicely to each other, those wonderful teen years. And we were starting to get close, but I had no idea that she had taken this drug at all. And 3 years afterwards, it was the coming in the early 70s was the burn the bra, women's lib, everything was really starting to go. And so at the college, they were encouraging all women to go get checked and everything. And so I went ahead and made my appointment, and the doctor came back out and he said, do you have anybody here with you? And I said, no. He says, do you want somebody here with you? And I'm going, no. And he goes, well, I don't know how to tell you this other than you have what looks like the beginning of malignant cervical cancer, most likely due to DES. And I thought, I had no clue what DES was. And so he went into a lengthy discussion. We have found since then at high school class reunions that it was an experimental drug used to prevent miscarriages. It was used actually up until the 70s.
So a lot has happened in between that time, from the first sign of cervical cancer. What happened there? Did you?
Well, I was only 19. I mean, and here I was. I'd driven from Tacoma to Seattle, and And, I drove back home and I didn't know what to do, but girls didn't talk to their dads about that kind of female stuff back then. And
How many other women are you aware of that have gone through what you've gone through? In fact, we haven't even started really talking about that yet, because there's a big, long list. How many other women do you know that have suffered like you have and had the same experiences without, I suppose, passing away from this? Maybe some have.
some have, some definitely have that I've known. That's a hard answer because everyone suffers in a different way. And how I may suffer may be totally different than somebody else. Now, as far as the numbers and the amounts of surgeries or things that had to be attended to, so far, everybody, doctors included, say I hold the record. They have made me not just an honorary chair of the medical team of my current 15 doctors, from the UW to Mayo Clinic to up here at Prov. They make me. They say, okay, so what do you think? And you know your body best. Tell us. And 9 times out of 10, they listen. And it's been pretty right on.
I can't imagine how you must have felt when you first heard about this. And I'm sure, well, maybe not. Maybe the doctors didn't know really the extent of how far this could go, but they were starting to hear cases and seeing cases
right.
from this.
I think you're right on with that, Clem. I think that they didn't know what can of worms had just been opened because we were first generation. We're kind of the guinea pigs. We still are. And when the lawyers kept badgering us, you've got to, you can make so much money off of big pharma. And our mindset was, but I'm alive. You can't put a price on a life. You can't put a dollar sign. You can't do a debit card for what life is. It's precious. There's no amount of money. Now, 45, 50, 60 years later, would I maybe think differently? Yeah, it sure would have been nice to have some of the money. I've probably put more doctors' kids through college, or my own kids, our own kids, got to pay their own way. But
let's talk about some of the things that you have experienced. Okay. I mentioned in the open that a large portion of your body is made of titanium and fish lines and some screws, lots of screws and things like that. Run us through some of the experiences on the surgical table that you have gone through just to be here today.
When I got hit by the drunk driver, my bones, it was a stick shift, and my right hand was on the stick. And I'm so tall. I'm at that point. I'm 5'9", and airbags weren't a thing then. So, and the seatbelt didn't kick in. So I came forward, and my jaw hit the steering wheel. My head went back and hit the back window. I can still hear that sound. And then the seatbelt clicked in, and thrust me back. I obviously was in shock.
Wow.
Obviously was in shock enough to know that, okay, I got to get off the road if this thing will drive. So I pull it into the driveway. It was stuck in reverse. And so I got out, went into the house, went up the 3 stairs into the house. Wow. The other guy had gone. We lived across the 2-lane road was our hayfields. And he had just gone down into the hayfields. And I called 911, and they were asking if I was hurt. And all of a sudden, that kind of brought me around to, oh my gosh, my back, my face, whatever. And I fell to the floor, and she goes, help us on the way, don't hang up. Well, I did hang up, and I called Bill. And Bill happened to be remodeling a place that was not too far away. and he actually passed the emergency vehicles. He was going so fast and made it to the house before they did. I was in full traction for 3 months, and then 6 months we just bolted the traction to the living room wall so we could be there.
And you and Bill had just gotten word that you were accepted to go on a missionary trip.
3 days earlier, we had been accepted. I was going to be teaching at university in Perth and Australia at first, and then came in a letter that we were going to get to go to Africa, and Bill would be on construction, and we would be working. I would be working again at clinic, and he would be helping with a big construction site to bring water to these villages that had no water, and teaching them some of the rudimentary farming techniques and building techniques. Our daughter at the time was 5, and I recently ran across the Get Well cards from her kindergarten class. And they were just so precious. They were just so great. And but she was really ticked at God because she was looking so forward to going to Africa. And she was so mad. And so Bill finally said, okay, enough's enough. I want you two to sit down and I want to tell you something. So he sat us down on the sofa and he said, I want you to look at your hand. So take your hand, if you're listening, watching, whatever you're doing, look at your hand and count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. He goes, okay, the call to the mission field has not changed, just the place. So whether you're at school, at the grocery store, wherever you are, no, it doesn't mean we're not Bible bangers. We're not, we're encouragers. We're people who are people of faith, and that's where it is. So we have a saying in our house, at the end of your hand. And it has happened more times than not, that just right there at the end of our hand is an opportunity, whether it's to pay it forward for somebody going through the Starbucks line or at the grocery store, or whether it's somebody else who just, you can tell, needs some help. Yeah.
That's amazing. I kind of want to get back to just the sheer number of surgeries you've had. And again, as to why the DES that you spoke of earlier is the primary reason, of course, and then you had the car accident on top of it.
Well, and on the car accident, the shoulders have now had to be rebuilt a total of 10 times. And because over time things wear out and some people don't do what they probably should do, obey orders as carefully as we could have been, or what we might tell our patients to do. That, kind of do as I say, not as I do. Isn't that how the saying goes? Yeah, that's
something
how I
like
remember it. Something like
Right.
that. But I had doctors, as I said, who were forward thinking, and my orthopedic surgeon had just learned a new technique down at Baylor, where still to this day, my scapular shoulder blades are held up with 25-pound test mono-filament fishing line. X-rays have gotten, and MRIs have gotten sophisticated enough that you can see the anchor bolts. You can actually see the monofilament line versus my cancer. I've not let them take my port out for the cancer. And so you can see that. You can see all of the screws. As far as the other bionic parts, do you want to get into that and the
Sure.
whys and
Yeah, it's my understanding from just the stories that you've shared with me through the years is there is a workshop that they set up next to the room that they're doing the surgery in, so that they can custom make whatever is needed, and they don't know what you need oftentimes until they get in there. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, this has now happened twice. First one was my knee. I had from the DES, one of the more common things is degenerative joint disease and osteoarthritis. Yes, we all get, as we get older and that kind of thing. But mine was progressing rapidly, enough that they were going in every 6 months just to clean it out, to vacuum it out. And it came a point when I had my first total knee when I was 28, which is, doctors even now will say at 55 or 60, you're still too young to get a total knee. We want to wait as long as possible. And I proved that reason. It is true, because I was still a mom. I was coaching, helping soccer. I was playing soccer. I was a local swim team coach, and pounding pavement and walking on that. And so I wore my first one out. And then I wore my second one out. And so we get down to surgery, and there are 3 different stations set up in the room next to me. Somebody from Florida, somebody from California, somebody from Seattle, and they were all set up. And I recently found out what it was for. Now, it was a study, but they literally fashioned my femur and my tibia, the long bone in my upper leg and the long bone in my lower leg. And then they put a piston in with the total knee, to fashion like that. And I'm 14 years out on that, and I have 124 degrees of range on that, which is, even for a geezer, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
The other just normal total knee, where I've only had one total knee, I've got 135. So that's saying something. The interesting thing is that somebody else that Terry and I went to high school with was the head surgical nurse that day. And so she got to watch all of it happen. And in my drug fog over the next several days, she could keep coming back and telling me the stories about what it was. She says, man, it was like watching Discovery Health. It was so cool. But what it was is they were prototyping for the 3D printers.
Wow.
And so now they can, before you have surgery, take a picture of the exact length, what you are, your fat, your muscle, your and fashion a titanium bone for you, and have it fit perfectly.
Wow, that's amazing. So what other parts of your body are titanium that have had this structure rebuilt?
We'll start with the head. I had they still don't know why. I had a rare brain bleed and speech. It hit right over here, which is your speech center. And I used to talk a lot like Yoda.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have some words like ablafet. I cannot to this day put the ACBDXers, ABDX, MF, Y, whatever.
How about the word salmon? Can you say salmon?
Oh,
and you live in Alaska. You can't say salmon.
That and the other whitefish, the halibut. Yeah, and of course, what do you cook it in? My husband loves this one. Try to say, what are we having tonight, honey? Whitefish. What kind of whitefish? What are you cooking it in? A pan. What are you lining the pan with, honey? Foil. No. What's the other word for it? I butcher.
Aluminum.
Yeah.
Yes. That's so funny.
Anyway,
but you know what? Your speech is so much better. I remember those Daffy Duck days, or what Yoda days, and you could hardly even get a full sentence out. I would actually even type what I was saying, and people would have to call and say, "Get off the computer! Get off the computer! You're typing Yoda." Oh my! You'd even do that.
So it would be, it was crazy. Wow. So, anyways, so we had that brain bleed. I got the speech back. We got a lot of that back. All of that happened during 9/11, which was a really scary time to be in rehab, when at that time I didn't talk. and I have my right side is like I've had a stroke. My hand, I never know if I'm going to have what kind of grip I'm going to have in my hand. I use build-up handles. I use plumbers, usually used on spoons and things. The insulation you can put around pipe. I'll do that for utensils. So I just don't have the strength on that one. So we have that, and short-term memory has been a part, because part of the short-term memory area has been hit. I do have the screws from when they had to take from the brain bleed, which they have no idea, again, where they had to screw my head back together.
Wow.
So then I have the screws and nuts and bolts in both knees. Because of one of the cancers, I got neuropathy, and I got it bad enough that I wasn't getting blood to my toes on my left foot. And so they had to fuse 4 of my toes. So they're metal from C56, which is when in the car accident, we had some railroad ties in the back end of the little pickup, and it hit right smack and hit me. And so that's been replaced with a cage. And so I've got a cage and screws with that. I'm also fused at L45S1, also again from the degenerative joint. The rest of my spine is everything is fused, all but C23, which is about 80% fused, and that's part of the DES that they're finding. I know I can no longer drive because I can't turn enough to be safe enough, and there would be no way that I want to be responsible to hurt anybody, in being able to do that. My shoulder, after I wrote Loose Screws and Skin Knees, I was coming back and delivering some books to hospice. And it was April, and I had a piece of ice about this big. And of course, my cleats were sitting on the passenger side that I should have been smart enough to use, but I said, oh, come on, there's hardly any ice. You can, not a big deal. Yeah, it was a big deal, because as soon as my foot hit it, I went down, hit my arm here, but shattered my arm up here. So I ended up with a plate and 10 screws there, which then after a year ago, they had to replace because some of the cancer and side effect things that had happened, more surgery, they had to take, I had lost so much weight. I'd lost almost 50 pounds, and the screws were coming through the bone and starting to do damage to the muscle area. So the doctors, I remember the doctors, he kind of reminds me of a 6'5" Doogie Howser, pigeon-toed, shoelaces untied, just great guy. He was newer to the community. And I heard, your name is up on a board with your doctor and what they're going to do. And I heard 3 doctors talking to him, and they said, are you absolutely nuts? You're going to operate on her? Don't you know that anything that will go wrong, it's always on her? You do have a backup plan, don't you? And he goes, no, but I will before I go in. They said, good. Well, got in there. I didn't have a deltoid muscle. When they took the screws and plate out, there's been so much remodeling, and they've had to take so much bone away. There was no muscle. So I can't move my arm. I have more function than I've had in the last 10 years, but I don't have as much range. And so he got in there. They were going to do a reverse total shoulder, which is the newer, great shoulder. If people are thinking and somebody says something as an occupational therapist and whatever, I would say, yes, consider it as a viable option. So they had to put a real total shoulder in. And the only reason I was in the hospital was because I'm a geezer. and because Medicare was primary. And otherwise I could have had it done outpatient center, go home, be fine, everything else. No, he said, I'll come at midnight and I'll let you out. No, just come in the morning. Well, I hadn't thought, yeah, great. At 4 o'clock, I'm going to get woken up and they're going to take my blood. So, which they did, which was a good thing because they found I'd lost half of my blood in the surgery. I'd lost so much blood. And so I said, just take me to Jiffy Lube, give me a couple pints and we'll be on our way. They said, no, if we give you 2, you're going to be here at least until tomorrow. Okay. Well, later that afternoon, after the second bag, after the lube and oil job, I suddenly went into just this flexion pattern, and this was the arm, but this hand would just grip, so I get rushed down to ER. All I can remember is they're doing CPR, they're pushing on me, and I'm kind of going, and then the happy juice comes in, and I don't remember anything. But the doctor was called, and he said, I'm just the mechanic. I don't know what to do. Do what you do because you think it's a stroke or a heart attack or something. I don't know. And so when I kind of came to around 8 o'clock that night, I'm looking at my oncologist sitting on the chair, and I'm going, are you just here doing rounds? And he goes, no, I drew the short straw. And I go, what? He goes, yeah, 7 of us were all at the same function. All of our pagers went off at the same time. So you don't know? I said, what? That they put a new shoulder in me? I said, yeah, I know that. That's why I'm here. Because no, we found a brain tumor the size of a golf ball in the back of your head. Oh. And I'm going like, yeah. Funny, Larry, funny. He goes, no, I'm serious. Do you want to see the picture? And he showed me, and I'm going like, how in the heck can we not know that I had something as big as a golf ball? I guess you can say that's a no-brainer, or, no brains, no headache. So I didn't have a headache. So what it was an aggressive form of a grade 2 meningioma. So that happened. So we get through that. So that pushes, there we go again, into more, more screws, had another surgery. This time it was more midline and goes straight down. Interesting thing is that it took enough pressure off that I really have not had Yoda other than those 30 words that never came back. My balance is much, much better.
That's great.
And that's just an anomaly. And then all of this, I don't know if you want to get into this, now, but this was all happening. About 4 to 6 weeks after we had lost our daughter, unexpectedly. She was pregnant and 23 weeks pregnant with our third grandbaby. And so things were kind of a little chaotic. You go from, being with your daughter and having fun with the grandkids to you're in the middle of your yearly cancer checkups and all that stuff that you have to go through, and those, colonoscopies and all that good kind of fun, to then go right into the shoulder surgery, to then, as soon as it was stable enough, go into brain surgery, to then go into, we get back into the yearly cycle. They do a CT scan, and they find that I didn't have a gallbladder anymore, but where the gallbladder duct was, duct cancer in the common bile duct. It's normally, it might be in somebody my age or older, might get up to 8 millimeters, and mine is at 19 millimeters. And they still have not figured out what. But they're in the middle of that, while when they did that CT, they said, let's do a PET scan and make sure she doesn't light up anywhere else. And lo and behold, I lit up at the 6th rib, and it showed that I had a tumor on my 6th rib. And when the radiologist came out and they were going to do a biopsy, she goes, Care, I've worked on you for 18 years. She goes, I can't do this. It's that where the tumor is sitting is right next to the main artery of the heart. and on the lining of your lung. There's no way I can do it without doing severe damage or killing you. And I said, you know, do what you got to do. She goes, let me take one more look. And while she went back, and what they ended up doing is going in through the fifth rib, went in about 2.5 inches and came through the backside.
When did you first, I guess, realize your faith, and how did that come about?
You know, I think I always had, I guess you would consider faith, because parents took us to church and that type of thing. But it wasn't until 3 days before my mom passed away that I was at a Young Life meeting, because it was one thing that I could get out of the house and be among my peers, because I was taken out of school part-time to take care of my mom, because one, because it was so costly. The other was hospice and home health was just coming into being. And so I would go to Young Life because there were cute boys, and I could see friends, and yeah, they could do some God talk, but that's okay. But this one talk they gave that night was really needling me. And I finally couldn't take it any longer. And I got up and I walked out, and a couple friends followed me. And they said that, you know, are you okay? You're not going to do anything stupid, are you? I said, no, I got to get some air. Just leave me alone. I need some air. And I realized that God, you know, I looked up and I said, God, if you're really real, I mean, you know, I go to church on Sunday, I help in Sunday school stuff, I know all this stuff, but if you're really, really real, I'm throwing the gauntlet down right here, right now. I can't take this anymore. I can't take not being able to date, not being able to go to football or baseball games or basketball games. I can't take not being able to become a lifeguard because of mom being sick. Take her, and I'll believe you're real. Now, 3 days later, my mom did die. Do I believe that God did that for me? No, she was going to die anyway. She was in final stages of stage 4 colon cancer. But I also know, and it's become a hallmark for me, is the closest I feel to God is when I come to the end of myself. And that's what happened that night in high school. I came to the end of myself. Yes, that was kind of in some of the Jesus movement times or whatever, but I never really got involved in a lot of that, because for me, my faith is more relationship. It's not about a denomination. It's not about, you know, beliefs in some of that. It's about what my relationship is with God. Now, there are the people who share the same values or share some of the same things I do, but if they don't, you know, I don't care if you're black, brown, pink, blue, purple polka dotted. I don't care if, you know, you happen to believe and go to the Jehovah's Witness church or Mormon church or Catholic church or whatever church. Going to a building, going to church doesn't make you a Christian. Just like going to your favorite fast food place doesn't make you a hamburger. For me, it's about relationship. And so that's kind of where I came to faith. And Bill kind of was the same. And yet he came to it after we had started, after we had first started dating. He was really realizing that. And we've just been a team ever since that.
Now, the daughter that you did lose, she was adopted because we started off with cervical cancer, and you could not have children,
right?
Even though you wanted them dearly. You have two adopted children.
Yes.
You have one left, Tim, and
we would not have had Tim if we had gone on the mission field.
Right. That's for another story someday.
Yeah.
I also want to talk about some of the things that you are noted for. You have a master's degree in education, and You're a physical therapist, correct? Occupational therapist.
Occupational therapist.
You helped develop the Wheels for the World for Joni and Friends International Disability Center. You were named one of the top 5 business women in America in 2000. You're the first Alaskan to be named a Hero of Hope for the American Cancer Society. I mean, you've done so many things, and you were talking about that here just in a few minutes ago about how cherished your life has been, I suppose, based on many of your experiences, and maybe perhaps God said, first of all, He let you live, and that's why you're
Right.
You're thrilled, but you did something with it. I mean, you're still doing something with it, and that's just amazing.
Well, thanks, Clem. I appreciate that. And there are days that everybody grieves, everybody lives in different ways. We all have struggles, we all have hardships, we all have good times, we all have bad times. But I believe you can either be in pain or you could be a pain. And it's all about what kind of attitude are you going to sport. I choose to sport a gratitude. Well, now, my husband might argue. He said, "Yeah, I've seen enough of your attitudes that I might beg to differ on that one, lady." His nickname for me is Lady, but yeah.
Well, Cara, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your story. What a road you have traveled! Wow.
Well,
I hope we get a chance to talk again.
This and
you bet. Care Tuk, everybody. Oh, I also want to talk about your loose screws and skin knees. That's your first book, and you have a second book coming out sometime soon, I hope.
Hopefully. We just found a printer. Yep, it's called Don't Wimp Out, Finding Faith, Courage, and Victory in Life's Daily Battles. So
we'll look forward to it.
Just go to www.caretuk.com.
Super, and then get your first book and your second one probably when it comes out.
Yep.
Thanks,
Clem.
Care Tuk.
Awesome.
Care Tuk, everybody. Thank you so much.
Bye.